This week, the trick to getting rid of the blahs, the seasonal blues that some of us might be feeling, is kindness. Now, you might think being kind to yourself is what we're going to say, and not a bad idea at all. But there's something about being kind to someone else that brings you a good feeling and helps to alleviate some of that down feeling that you might have. And so we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at a challenge from the prophet Micah to take a walk. And how we do that and where we go, well, that's what we're going to discover together. So if you stick around to the end, we'll talk about a practice that you might take up this week, a little gift for your journey. But for now, let's take a journey together on the Marginal Way.
During this worship series, we are exploring how our everyday activities can become spiritual practices that bring more light and meaning to our lives. The prophet Micah offered up a vision for life lived from a different perspective. Rather than see doing good as obligatory sacrifice, he said that when we live our lives with a love for kindness for all God's people, we are fulfilling God's desire to spread justice and love throughout the land. This week, what if we lived each day on the lookout for ways to make someone's day through a kind and unexpected gesture? It might just make our day as well.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. When I feel afraid and I think I've lost my way, still you're there right beside me. Nothing will I fear as long as you are near. Please be near me to the end. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path.
Generous God, we give you thanks for your everyday mercies. Open our eyes to the light of possibilities, even when the day ahead holds difficulties. Be with us, near us, beside us. Amen.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path.
More More truth is breaking from your word. More light, more truth. Holy Spirit, help us hear what needs to be heard.
Well, hello again. Seeing you like this always makes me feel good. Makes me feel a little better than I did before. And you know what else makes all of us feel good? Doing something nice for someone else. Yeah, because it's not only what people do for us that makes us feel good, but doing something nice for someone else has a good feeling that goes with it, doesn't it? In our opening song, the one that we hear each week, More Light, there's a line that says, help us hear what needs to be heard. We're asking God to remind us what we need to hear. And the Bible reminds us again and again and again that what we need to hear is love one another, love your neighbor, be kind. And so today, we're going to seek more light by seeking ways to be kind. So let's gather with our lamp. I'll turn ours on, and you get yours ready to turn on too. So here we are with our Time with Children lamp, and ta-da! More light. Now, how about you? In 3, 2, 1, ta-da! More light. We've been hearing a lot lately, haven't we, about viruses? Maybe you've put on a mask. Masks make it hard to see your expression, don't they? They make it hard to hear a little bit, too. But we wear masks because viruses, and this virus is going around, is what is called contagious. Can you say that word? Contagious? It means that if one person has it, someone else might get it very quickly and very easily. Well, you know what else is contagious, aside from viruses that make us sick? That's right, kindness. Kindness is contagious. When you do something kind, other people are more likely to do something kind to someone else as well. It kind of spreads, it grows. It's the kind of thing that we want to be sick with, right? I mean, sadly, meanness is also contagious. If you're mean to someone else, they're more likely then to be upset and be miserable and be mean to somebody else. And so meanness spreads. It's also contagious. So perhaps this week, if you're putting on a mask, washing your hands, doing the sorts of things that help you to not spread bad viruses, each of those moments can be a moment to remind you to do something kind for someone else, because you don't want to spread meanness, but you do want kindness to be contagious. So spend some time this week very intentionally doing something kind for someone else. Can you do that? I know you can. All right then, let us finish our time together with our Repeat After Me poem. There is a lamp inside of me. It's always there for all to see. But there are times the light feels dim and things are tough and just too grim. But that's okay. When I feel down, I know in time it turns around. I'm not alone when I am sad. I'm always loved. For that, I'm glad. And I'm glad we had this time together. And I'm glad that I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
More light. us hear what needs to be heard. Help us hear what needs to be heard.
The reading today is from the book of Micah, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Hear what Yahweh says. Rise. Plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the case of Yahweh, and you enduring foundations of the earth. For Yahweh has a case against the people, and will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you? In what have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. O my people, remember now what King Balak of Moab devised, what Balaam son of Beor answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the saving acts of Yahweh. With what shall I come before Yahweh and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before God with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? God has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does Yahweh require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? This ends the reading. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
This is probably one of those familiar passages from the prophets. Right? One of the things we do, unfortunately, with some of these prophetic words is forget that they were spoken to a people about a particular time, about a particular thing happening. And in this case, Micah was speaking to the leaders of his time, complaining that they were giving money, basically being extorted, but were giving in to the would-be conquerors and giving money away to these foreign powers who might invade and conquer them. And by doing so, the poor were suffering. Sound familiar? Guns or butter, maybe? Maybe the United States budget that last year spent half of this discretionary spending on the military. You know, the military budget in the United States last year was $778 billion. You know what it was in China? The second largest military budget? $252 billion. Followed by, not Russia, but India at $73 billion. So Russia, the country we're so afraid of, is spending $62 billion. That's less than a tenth of what we spend on our military budget. But somehow Social Security and Medicare and poverty intervention and housing and education, those are the problems, right? That's where the money's disappearing to. So I wonder what Micah might have to say to us in our time today about what we do with our resources and if we're taking care of those who are poor. So Micah passes this indictment in a vision of a courtroom. And instead of God being the judge, which might not be a bad thing, right? Because we know as much as God is just, God is also merciful. You might expect a little mercy from God, but it's actually God who's on trial in this vision. And so the judge and jury are the hills, nature, creation itself. And that doesn't bode well for us, does it? If we wanted impartiality, we're going to do better with God, who, if anything, might be partial toward us as God's children. But creation is cause and effect. It's what Darwin reminded us is red in tooth and claw, right? And what's our track record in treatment of creation? So we might not be in a good position in this courtroom now, will we? And this opens up, this fictional trial opens up with God saying, I have been just and merciful, and points out, you were in bondage in the land of Egypt. I brought you up out of there. And try as you might in the wilderness, listening to false prophets like Balaam, you brought cursing upon yourself. Even then, I stuck with you, and I brought you into the land that you didn't even own and had no right to. I have been good to you. How about you? Right? That's the setup. That's where we are in this trial. And the next thing that Micah envisions is a rather desperate plea on our part. It's rather foolish to say, we can't afford you, God. These rivers of oil, these grand sacrifices. Why, you would require of us sacrifice of children. I sure hope there's sarcasm intended there, because one of the things that was very clear in ancient Israel was that our God, Yahweh, was not a God who required the sacrifice of children. As a matter of fact, Micah is going to go on to point out that we got it all wrong if we think that we have to earn God's love through sacrifice. Remember, this is pre-Jesus. This is Jewish faith, understanding that sacrifice is not the way to God. It's easy for us to miss that point. And isn't it ironic that the plaintiffs in this case are imagined needing to sacrifice children, when that is really exactly what they were doing and we do when we sell off our future? When we worry about threats in the present moment and spend half of our money on defense against some alleged fear that isn't necessarily coming, taking that food out of the mouths of future generations. We are literally sacrificing our children. And then Micah slams down the gavel in this courtroom depiction and delivers the verdict. The verdict is, you already know what is right and wrong. You didn't even need this. You know what is good, and you know what God requires of you. To which, of course, I'm sure Micah expected his listeners, whether then or now, whether it's them or it's us, to say, oh, really? We know, do we? Because we haven't shown that we know, have we? Micah says, you know what is good. And what is good is to do kindness, to love kindness, to do justice, and to walk humbly before your God. Kindness and justice and humility. That's the sacrifice. And it's not really a sacrifice, it's a response to the goodness of our God. That's what's expected of us. That's what Micah reminds us. And we have to be careful not to see this as a checklist, to see this as a sacrifice, because that's the way our minds think, right? Like, love kindness, do random acts of kindness. Check, I'm good. If I do a little bit of justice, whatever that means, participate in that, I check. And as long as I'm not too full of myself, check, I've done it. Now I've earned God's love, right? That's not it. What is good is to understand how this works together. How walking the walk, the journey, is the response to God's mercy. And we do that by loving kindness and doing justice. And too often we do kindness and love justice, right? We do the random acts of kindness. We think we have to muster up some kindness and do something, and then kind of give a nod towards, yeah, things are bad, but maybe they'll change. And gee, I'd like to see them change, but what can I do? I would argue that Micah is telling us that there is a thread here, that there's a focus, that by seeing things through the lens of humility, then we will understand that our acts of kindness are how we build justice. It's all of a common thread. It's all woven together. So what does it mean to walk humbly? What does it mean to be humble? It doesn't mean be Casper Milquetoast. It doesn't mean just agree with everything and deprecate yourself. It's not that. The scriptures tell us that Moses was the most humble person on the planet. You don't think of Moses, the great leader who stood up to Pharaoh, as very humble, do you? But he also wasn't full of himself. He understood the meaning of this word. You know, the same root for humble is the word for earth, humus. To be humble means to be of the earth. To be humble means that you will worship only that which is above the earth, right? You will bow down to God, but not to Pharaoh, because Pharaoh is like you, part of the earth. That's why we don't worship anything in creation. We direct our worship beyond creation to something greater, to our God who is with us and beyond. That's what it means to be humble, to know your place. That's how I would use that word. What would it mean to understand this passage to say, know your place, understand your calling, know your gifts, understand what makes you feel most fully alive? What is that? And do that. Because in doing that, then you will do kindness. It will emanate from you, because you will be in that sweet spot where you know that you're doing what is right for you. You will know what is good, and therefore you will be kind. And if we all did that, if we all pursued that, not what someone else is supposed to do, not that's a good idea, that's a nice thing, I should go do it, but this is the nice thing I can do, and so I will do it. If we all do that, then we will build the kind of kingdom of heaven that Jesus said is already here. We just don't see it because we're not walking humbly, loving kindness, and therefore creating the justice. It really is that simple and that difficult, right? Because we all kind of want to give a nod to justice. We do love kindness. We love doing the wonderful, caring acts. Makes us feel good, and it should, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like that story of being in a village on a river, and people are coming down the stream, floating on the water, injured and dying, and we're caring for them again and again and again until we're overwhelmed, until someone raises a voice and says, maybe we should go upstream and see what's happening and put an end to it. And that's the distinction between kindness and justice. Justice is stopping the systemic evil that's creating the problem. Kindness is addressing the problem when you see it before you. Now, you can't separate one from the other, though we do by just doing kindness and not doing justice, right? By not ever working to solve the problem. But if you are engaged, fully engaged in what you are called to do, and you are exhibiting those kinds of acts of kindness, you're going to want the system to change so that you don't have to keep doing what you're doing. I mean, if you're involved in some sort of outreach and caring, and you want to see the problem continue so that you can keep doing it, you need to sit down and examine that, because that's not very kind, and it certainly is not just. What we really have before us is something I know I'm preaching to the choir, because there's a ministry among us, created by us, owned by us, celebrated by us, that names exactly this story. It's the starfish model. It's the walking down the beach, seeing all the stranded starfish and tossing them in one at a time. Knowing that when someone comes up and says, you can't save them all, why bother? That they're right. You can't save them all, but you can save the one. And you can say with every confidence of kindness and justice, it matters to this one. And do that kind act and go on and do the next. And maybe somehow by continuing to do these things, it will be generative. You will create a model and others will want to do it with you. And maybe all the starfish will get saved. But you don't sit back and have a committee and try to plan how to save all the starfish while they're stranded on the beach. You get started. And you invite others to walk along. That's why it's a journey of humility, knowing your place. And maybe your place isn't starfish. Maybe that's not your place to be. Maybe your place is to make change by sharing change. You take the quarters to the laundromat. And through the lens of walking humbly, you will see that those acts of kindness are not just isolated. Because by doing those things, you are saying, I am with you. And that's just as important as saying, here's some quarters to get your clothes clean. Because by standing with, by listening with, by caring and loving, being kind, you are taking the first step of justice. To say, it doesn't have to be this way. It shouldn't be this way. We're going to fix this together. Because you're not alone. Because I'm here, and we're all in this together. You see how that web works? How walking humbly by knowing our place in creation will make it to justice eventually. If we walk humbly, we can see how our personal reducing, reusing, and recycling is part of a bigger picture of the justice of reversing global warming. It's not done overnight. It's not done alone. But it's certainly not done if you don't participate in the kindness. The justice will never come. If we walk humbly, we will put mission before maintenance. Will we not? Have we not? So we don't have to ask the poor to suffer so that we can have a building. Sound familiar? A story that we can do. If we do this, we can then create budgets like the one that we have before us next week that commits more money to mission than to maintenance. 20% of that budget is for mission, and it's more than maintaining the property. That's an act of kindness that is also an act of justice, one that is walking humbly, knowing our place, following our mission, because that is what God requires of us. And it doesn't feel like a burden. It's not a great sacrifice. It's a joyful walk in God's way. When we commit to this path, to the path of walking humbly before and with our God, we will find ourselves on the marginal way, walking into places where those on the margin are looking to us to use who we are and what we have in service. That's what Mike is calling us to. That's what kindness, that's what justice, that's what humility truly is. Because when we are on this walk, we are falling in love with the type of kindness that leads to creating justice. Amen.
Thank you for sticking with us to the end. I hope that you have something to take away, something to feed you on your journey. And if you've found some gift in all of this, it would be great if you offered to us a gift. We'd love to have your support, as simple as liking this video, sharing this video, subscribing to our channel. All those things really help. And if you can spare a little bit of money, you've heard what we do with it. We'd love to help others, and we'd love for you to help us do that. So visit our website and make a donation if you can. We thank you in advance for any gift, for there is none too small. And now this gift for you. This week, practice kindness. Practice if you must, random acts of kindness, doing just whatever might come to mind, maybe paying for the person behind you in line, that kind of thing. Paying it forward, being kind, always produces benefits. And in a way, it's a fake it till you make it, until you own the kindness that is your gift. I hope you find at least a piece of that this week. Maybe you begin the journey of exploring exactly what it is that you were placed on this earth to do. What a gift that would be. So until we see again, go in peace.